Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is January 19th. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Happy national holiday to everybody celebrating here. I have a little bit of a day off, which is the reason for the later show. I will be on normal time for the rest of the week, but I'm glad we waited a little bit because we got some big breaking news as the Buffalo Bills have officially fired head coach Sean McDermott. We will break down that move, what I think of it, and what might be next for both of those teams. We'll go over the divisional round as well. Lots of big takeaways, big questions. Is it time for the Houston Texans to move off of CJ Stroud? How do they fix this issue? We will talk about that and much more. The College Football National Championship is tonight. We'll preview that one, talk a little bit about how I think that game will go between the Indiana Hoosiers and the Miami Hurricanes down at the Orange Bowl. And we will talk a little bit about baseball. I know it's scary, baseball, but there were some big moves. Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers, Bo Bichette to the Mets. We'll talk about that, the impact on not just those teams, but baseball in general with some of those moves. But let's start off with the big story of the day, that being Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott out in Buffalo after a really successful tenure. He and Josh Allen have provided the most successful run in Bills history outside of their little stint where they went to the Super Bowl 4 times. Now, obviously, this didn't get over the hump, which is why he is no longer employed. This was a year that felt like the year the Bills had to do it. So I'm not saying that this necessarily is a bad move for the Bills, but the first thing that sticks out to me with this move is the timing is weird. And I'm not going to say that guys like Stefanski and teams like the Falcons and guys like Harbaugh and teams like the Giants knew that this was going to happen. But the fact that Stefanski signs the day before McDermott gets fired, and that Harbaugh announces that he is going to be the head coach of the Giants and signs 2 days before the Bills officially fire Sean McDermott, I think makes this a little bit tougher of a decision. The other thing that makes this tougher, Matt LaFleur, the head coach of the Packers, got extended yesterday. That's another head coach that is potentially off of the list here, which means I think the top 3 options that potentially would have been out there are now gone. And now other teams that might have been interested, say the Falcons were interested in a guy like McDermott, he can no longer go down there. And I think this hurts a lot of those. So the timing is weird here because the Bills lose out on, in my mind, the top 2 open coaching candidates in Harbaugh and Stefanski. Now, they could still go and try and lure Tomlin out. He said that he's not going to coach this year, which I genuinely believe. But when an opening like the Bills comes around, it's kind of hard to pass up because we've seen what he's been able to do with a mediocre Steelers roster, even a bad Steelers roster. That's not a great Bills roster, but you know what it is? It's a great quarterback. You have the quarterback, which is what Mike Tomlin never had. So if they're able to lure Tomlin into Buffalo, I think that could do a lot for him, his career, and also for the Bills. That's the kind of home run hire that we're looking at here. Again, this is something that kind of had to happen. They weren't getting over the hump. His seat was just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and I think the Bills decided that if they didn't win this year, they were going to fire him regardless. This just is the way that the NFL goes. But now we have had 10 head coaching openings. That is a lot of head coaching openings here. Of course, 2 of them have already been filled. But Sean McDermott out in Buffalo here. This is huge. Josh Allen looking for a new head coach for the first time in his career. They are going to retain Brandon Beane, the GM. Now, again, there are a lot of ways that the Bills could go here. They might be tempted to stay offensive and get a guy that could help develop Josh Allen more, but there's not too much more development for Josh Allen. That defense needs some work, so they also could go on the defensive side of the ball. As far as the top candidates out there, the top one in my mind for him is Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills right now. And you might be saying, Jeremy, why Joe Brady? Joe Brady is a part of the regime that can't get over the hump here. Joe Brady has not been the head coach, first of all. It keeps the culture around. Every single year when Joe Brady is in discussion to get head coaching jobs, Josh Allen has always said, oh, no, he doesn't do anything for our success. There's a little bit of a joke at the podium trying to keep him in Buffalo. He clearly likes working with Joe Brady. He's been the OC since Brian Daboll left. And we've seen how successful he's been with Brian Daboll and now with Joe Brady. I think that is the home run hire that's available. Again, if they can get Tomlin to come out of retirement, you do that immediately. But I don't think he's coaching this year, which in my mind leaves not too many great coaching candidates left. Like, you can look at some of the top offensive minds available. Cliff Kingsbury, I don't really know if that's the way that they want to go with Josh Allen. He's got a really great offensive mind, but we've seen how he's flamed out down the stretch of seasons. That's not what the Bills need. They need a guy that's going to rise in the playoffs, not a guy that's going to fizzle out down the stretch. We've seen some guys like McDaniel, who, again, a great offensive mind, but when he's had all the weapons, which the Bills don't really have, even though Tua is a limiting factor, this is an offense. This is a guy that just cannot quite get over the hump. Again, you're looking for guys that can get you over the hump. And Joe Brady isn't necessarily proven to get teams over the hump, but he was the OC for the best college football team, maybe of all time, in that 2019 LSU squad. That is the kind of team that I think he could use. With Josh Allen at the helm, I think that's the kind of team he could build in the NFL. Maybe not the greatest team of all time, but you get him. On the offensive side, again, I think that's the best way to go. If you wanted to go defense, there's some really good options out there as well. Chris Shula, a young guy, defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, is out there. Brian Flores, of course, is out there. We have seen a lot of guys go for Jesse Minter. That's another one that's out there for the Bills. I think Jesse Minter could be a good hire, but he feels more like a Pittsburgh or a Ravens kind of hire to me. Brian Flores is an interesting one. Brian Flores is one that has some connections to Pittsburgh, but again, you want to build up a defense. You want to look at a defense that's been successful maybe without the biggest names in the world. You're looking at a guy like a Brian Flores and over with Minnesota. They've had some really great names, but they don't really have a superstar, which is what you're looking at on that Bills defense, and yet he consistently turns those defenses into success stories. So there's two different ways they could go, but if I'm the Bills here, I am moving off of Sean McDermott in favor of the guy in the building, the guy who seemingly is going to get a head coaching job this year that you don't really want to let out, in Joe Brady, a guy that Josh Allen is familiar with, a guy that Josh Allen likes, and a guy that can keep the culture intact. I think there's a reason why they're only moving off of the head coach and not the GM in Brandon Beane, and it's because they want to keep the same structure in place, and the best way to do that is to hire from within. People might say, why fire if you're going to hire from within? I think you get a different perspective with an offensive coach in Joe Brady as opposed to a defensive coach in Sean McDermott. Now, if you can find a good defensive coordinator, that is going to be the key. Maybe they stick with a lot of the same staff here, but I know Sean McDermott is going to throw his hat into the coaching cycle again. He is going to probably find another job because he's a floor raiser. And that's the thing. This is what it turns out to me why they fired him. First of all, he can't get them over the hump. But the reason that he hung on for so long is because he had been so successful. And it's not like this Bills team is the most talented team in the world, right? This is a Bills team that has major flaws all over the roster. You don't have a true wide receiver one. Khalil Shakir is nice, but he's not a wide receiver one. That's part of why you can't get over the hump, right? The defense has really struggled in the secondary. They're really, really thin. And I know that this year they've been better in the secondary, but they did that by sacrificing their defense against the run. They couldn't get that going. And when they focus against the run like they did in the Broncos game, they got gashed in the secondary. Once one player goes down, they have no depth over there. And that is a real issue because we've seen that now bite them in the butt 2 straight postseasons and maybe even more. But it really stands out these last 2 postseasons. Backup corner comes in, immediate touchdown on his head in this Broncos game that helps send this game to overtime. Then, of course, you have a injury to Benford against the Chiefs. They can't stop Rashee Rice after that, and the Chiefs go ahead and win in the last postseason. So they need depth at that corner position. Getting new perspective, getting a different defensive system might be able to help with that. Brian Flores, I think, is a really good defensive coordinator hire, even if he doesn't get that head coaching job. This is what I would do if I were the Bills. Again, I would bring in Joe Brady to be the head coach. Then I would go ahead and hire Brian Flores as the defensive coordinator. I think that is a pretty likely landing spot for him, as his contract is up in Minnesota. But there's a lot of places he could go. I just think this was a move made out of necessity, not necessarily ones that the Bills wanted to make, but they're stuck in this cycle, and I think it's a good thing that they made this move now. It's just tough with how many big names are already off the market. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where do you think the Bills go from here? Who do you think the Bills hire? Was this the right move? Again, I do kind of understand why this move was made. There wasn't a lot more that McDermott could get out of this team, and they need to get better. Grass isn't always greener, though, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back after this fire. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to those divisional round games. Bo Nix breaks his ankle. He is no longer going to be playing in the NFL playoffs. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that game and much more. That's coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, January 19th, Martin Luther King Day here in the United States. If you're just tuning in, we just went over the breaking news of the day. Sean McDermott out as the head coach in Buffalo, a move that had to happen after failing time and time again in the postseason. Who might their next guy be? We talked about that and why this move was made. In this segment, we are going to talk a little bit here about the overall divisional round, not just this story with the Bills. Before we do, we got a question from the chat from Caleb. I'm curious if they aren't hiring Joe Brady as head coach, if they have a stipulation to retain him as OC, and they hire a defensive head coach. I doubt it. I just don't think they have that written into the contract because he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere. But if not Buffalo, a lot of other places he could go. I expect him to get a job this cycle, especially after they fire head coach Sean McDermott. But let's get into this divisional round because I got a couple major questions from it. We're going to go in order from where these games started. We're going to start in this Buffalo game because this was a game that you could blame a lot of people on, but you cannot walk away from this game without blaming Josh Allen. Josh Allen is amazing, and he kept this team in the game after they had lost everything. But the reason that they were so far down was because of him. You can't play like that and expect to win the game. The turnovers, the fumbles, it's been an issue, especially at the end of the half. You have to understand, you're not making something happen with no timeouts, and you're not even at the 50-yard line yet. You have to understand that that's not happening. You can't be loose with the football in that situation with a Broncos team that is trying to punch out the football every single time. You knew that from that first half, that they were forcing that football. You can't be loosey-goosey with it, holding it out with one hand. That is the difference in the game. There's a lot of moments that you could point to say this is why the Bills lost the game. You can point to that controversial play in overtime with Brandon Cooks and that interception called for McMillan, right? That was probably an interception. It probably was. He didn't survive the ground, right? There are lots of reasons why you could talk about this Bills team losing, but the main reason this Bills team lost is because of Josh Allen. on the same side of the coin, the main reason this game went to overtime is because of Josh Allen. So this is not a game that you can say we have to get rid of Josh Allen. This is just a tough situation. He does understand that it's his fault. You saw him at the podium taking blame for it, and sure, his teammates don't like to hear that. That's understandable. You don't want your quarterback taking the blame, but it's his fault a little bit. And it's not all his fault. There's other reasons why they lost this game, but that is one of the big factors. You can't play like that and expect to win. He played like that. He didn't expect to win, and yet he was able to keep them in the game because he is Josh Allen. If he had even committed one less turnover, this game looks like a Bills win in regulation to me. But there are a lot of other ways to look at this game, and I think one of the bigger questions, the biggest surprise story coming out of it, not just that it led to the firing of Sean McDermott, but the big surprise, Bo Nix. Bo Nix breaks his ankle on one of his final snaps of the game. It's still unclear on which one they're talking about, whether it's the kneel down, where I thought he just waited a little bit too long. He just kind of wandered over there, and he kind of invited contact. So that could have been part of it, when he took the knee trying to center it for the field goal attempt. It could have been when he rolled out to the left right before he threw that play that was eventually called pass interference on Trey White over there. So there's a lot of places where it could have happened. I don't know if it's ever been officially confirmed, but that was one of the more shocking announcements. Sean Payton does his post-game press conference, comes back 30 minutes later, and tells the world that Bo Nix is out for the season after really a magnificent game. He outdueled. He really did. He outdueled and he outplayed a really great quarterback, the reigning MVP in Josh Allen. And it sucks. It really does. If you've been listening, if you've been watching for a while, you'll know that I am president of the Bo Nix hate club. I really am. And I don't like that Bo Nix gets all the credit that he gets, because wins are not a quarterback stat. And that's really the main stat people point to with Bo Nix. He's more of an average quarterback. I do go a little bit too far with my hate, but he played an incredible game. He really looked like the best quarterback in that matchup, and the way that this Broncos team was playing, if Bo Nix is the quarterback, they're probably going to the Super Bowl. They really are. I know the Patriots are a great team and a great defense, but the way that he was playing, that is a Super Bowl level team right now. He was playing really great football, especially in the biggest moments, which I appreciate and I see. He's still kind of mid, though. At the end of the day, a great performance against a not great defense doesn't push that, but this is a brutal loss for the Broncos here. Where do they go from here? It's Jarrett Stidham, the starting quarterback. He started 4 games in his career total. None bigger, of course, than the AFC Championship game at home against Drake May and the New England Patriots, right? These two teams will meet up. It's like Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning of old. These two teams playing yet again in an AFC Championship game in Mile High. Last time, of course, Von Miller made a couple big plays. Denver advanced to the Super Bowl, but that's history. This is now. It's going to look a lot different with Jarrett Stidham under center. How will this team be able to survive without being able to air the ball downfield? We saw the impact of being able to stretch a defense like the Buffalo Bills. We've seen how that goes. We have seen the impact of that team. They weren't able to run the ball. Jaleel McLaughlin had a couple big runs, but RJ Harvey barely touched the ball on the ground. It's a lot of little screen passes over there, and that is just an extension of the run game. But you have to be able to keep a defense honest, and without the threat of Bo Nix to run, that takes a lot more pressure off of these corners, and you're not going up against as bad of a run defense as that Bills team next week when you play the Patriots. This is going to be a really, really tough game, and against a really tough interior of that Patriots. Barmore on that line, Milton Williams on that line. You're not going to be able to run up the middle. You saw that in that Texans game. They became one-dimensional, and when you're able to shut down a quarterback like C.J. Stroud, who I think is shell-shocked from that offensive line. We'll get to C.J. Stroud in a second, but when you're able to shut down a guy like that, how easy is it going to be for this team to shut down a guy in Jarrett Stidham? A real tough loss for the Broncos and Bo Nix. What are they going to do without Bo? I think they're going to lose this game. It really is tough to lose a quarterback in the playoffs, and it's unfortunate the way that it happened, but it's next man up in football, and Sean Payton is going to have to coach his ass off in order to get this team going. Next game up on our list, we saw an absolute blowout. The Seattle Seahawks put up 41 points. On that 49ers defense. Absolutely brutal performance from that 49ers team. They could not get anything going. It was a huge, huge mess for them. Kenny Walker gets his time to shine like they should have been doing all season long. I never want to celebrate an injury, and it sucks that Zach Charbonnet had that injury in that game, but you got to see how special Kenny Walker can be. 3 touchdowns in this one, over 100 rushing yards. This is what happens when you put the ball in the hands of a playmaker. Sam Darnold was clearly injured in this game. I don't think he threw a ball more than 10 yards downfield, and yet they were able to make this game happen. They were able to win this game. We've got our very own resident Seahawk fan here, Mayrob Fatemi, very excited about this game. I'm sure he will join us here in a second to talk about the Seahawks, talk about that absolute rout of the 49ers. But one of the big things that happened here, the Seahawks emerged as contenders. We already knew that they were contenders since they were the 1 seed. We already knew how good that defense was. But the fact that they stamped it, they've now shut down Christian McCaffrey, who's been unshutdownable by anybody else this season twice in 3 weeks, is insane. We saw what McCaffrey was able to do against a great Eagles defense. But now back-to-back weeks, they have held that 49ers team to 0 touchdowns, 9 points total, completely shut down Christian McCaffrey in both games, and it helps that Kittle isn't there. But my God, Mayrob, this is a tough look for the Seattle Seahawks here. It is, I mean, for the 49ers, that defense is elite, and we will see how they are going to play against a really, really tough Rams team that the last 2 times they played have gone to the last second kick. Of course, the Seattle Seahawks missed one in the first game, and the Rams were able, to beat the Rams in overtime in the second one. But we'll get Mayrob's thoughts when he hops on with us in a second. They look like the best team in the NFL right now. They should be favored to win the Super Bowl. There's a reason why that model keeps pushing out numbers for the Seattle Seahawks. Heading into the weekend, there was a model that said they win the Super Bowl 22.1% of the time. That's with 8 teams still in the running there. But after that performance, and with the change without Bo Nix in there, we've seen defense the same. Defense wins championship. The Houston defense is out of the running because their offense is inept. That Houston defense was good enough to take them to a Super Bowl. It really was. That Houston offense, we couldn't get out of their own way. C.J. Stroud throws a whole lot of interceptions, which means the best defense left in the playoffs in what I'm calling the year of the defense belongs to the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seattle Seahawks should be your favorite to win the Super Bowl. They just have to get past the Rams here. That's going to be their toughest test. The next game, as we head over to Sunday's action, let's break down a little bit that Patriots versus the Houston Texans, because it was a snow game, it was a sleet game, it was a weird weather game, but CJ Stroud looks just crushed back there. He was terrified, running for his life, and he didn't have any time. But this was the issue with them heading into the season. There was talks, legitimate talks from the broadcast, from the ESPN broadcast, wondering if Davis Mills would come in the second half. And I don't know if that would have made a difference against this team. I really don't. But CJ Stroud cannot have a performance like that. He really can't. The offensive line is the issue at the end of the day. We know it is. This is very similar to Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was a little bit better under pressure, but you can understand why he's scared to hold on to the ball. His best weapon is out with Nico Collins. His number 1 wide receiver is out with Nico Collins. His safety option goes down with Dalton Schultz going down early in the game. In the first quarter, Dalton Schultz goes down. That defense is doing everything. And yet that Patriots defense is also really, really good. It's not like you're playing just a mediocre defense like the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going up against a defense that will be able to rush the passer, that will be able to get you under pressure. And when you don't have your weapons to threaten them deep, they feel a lot more comfortable to send the house when you don't have anyone to throw the ball, when you don't have a running game going like you did against the Steelers. It is just really tough to get stuff. But the question here is, the big one I had from this game Is it time to move on from CJ Stroud? Mayrob will come on and join us in a second with that question. Is it time for them to move on from CJ Stroud? The Patriots get a big win. Davis Mills undefeated when he played this season for this team, and a lot of guys I think could have been undefeated playing for this team with how great that defense is. But the fact that he wasn't making mistakes was the most important thing. You knew heading into this game that if CJ Stroud didn't throw an interception, if he didn't fumble the ball, if he didn't have 5 turnovers, that this was going to be at least a competitive game, if not a win for the Houston Texans, because that defense was so good. Again, this is the year of the defense. We've seen it. All of the teams that were still alive in that round, really all of them that were still alive in that round, aside from maybe the Bills, had really great defenses. And even the Bills had some shine on their defense. They had a really good, they had a pretty solid secondary, but that's because other teams just ran the ball on them all the time. And again, that secondary depth, once it goes down, it goes down. But you look at the other teams that were alive in that round. The Texans, of course, best defense in the NFL. The Seahawks, probably the second best defense in the NFL. You look at a team like the Rams, who had a really great pass rush and was able to create really great defense, especially early on in the season. They also have an MVP. The Patriots, of course, have an elite defense. We saw that on display here really in both weeks of the playoffs. You can go through team by team, and every single team has a great defense other than maybe the Buffalo Bills here, but it does not matter. In the year of the defense, the best defense remaining seems like they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, and now the Broncos defense that has taken a little bit of a step back gets to go up against this Patriots defense that's taken a step forward. Of course, the quarterback is going to play a huge, huge role in this, but CJ Stroud, I don't think his time has come yet, but they desperately need to get an offensive line. We've been screaming about this for years, at least 1 year in this situation. Instead, they go out and they draft 2 wide receivers. They go out and they trade away their best offensive tackle, and they say, CJ Stroud, Godspeed, good luck, find someone. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to just I feel like you can't really blame this on him. He had a bad performance. I know. And you can blame this one game on him, but he's shell-shocked back there. He doesn't have the presence of mind. He doesn't feel comfortable, even in open pockets, to step up, to make a throw. He's jittery. You've destroyed a great quarterback. This is what happens when you don't give them protection. You need an offensive line, and you need it in the worst way. You need to do what the Bears did this offseason, and you need to just say, screw it. Every single penny that I have is going towards an offensive line. Every single one. I don't care what it costs you on your defense. I don't care what it costs you on your offense. I don't care what it costs you. You need to get an offensive line if you ever want to make it past the divisional round. The Texans have never in their history gotten past the divisional round. They've now lost their 3 years in a row, and it's not the head coach's fault. It could be CJ Stroud, at least this year, but it is 100% the offensive line, and the GM should be on the hot seat right now, especially if he doesn't invest in that offensive line. We'll talk more about that as time goes on, but the last game, one of the best ones, the second overtime game of the weekend, the Bears and the Rams in snowy Chicago, and what a play by Caleb Williams, first of all. Magical moment. That was straight out of a Madden playbook. I could not believe what I saw. Literally, ran 30 yards backwards, fadeaway throw to the end zone to a tight end. Cole Kmet makes this catch. We can talk about a push-off or not. It doesn't matter. That is some magic. That is some magical stuff that you don't see in real life, but Caleb Williams pulled it off not only in real life, but in a playoff game. As time was expiring, that is insane. Now, obviously, it didn't go the Bears' way in overtime, but this is a hugely successful season. Caleb Williams has arrived, and he's not perfect. We've seen him throw some bad interceptions, some arm punts here and there, but his wide receivers also dropped a couple balls. The running game could not quite get going. I love Kyle Monangai. I really think he's a guy that could be a really good number 2 for the Bears. Swift had his best season, maybe of his career, but I don't know if that's a guy that Ben Johnson really wants to be that lightning to Monangai's thunder, because we have seen him literally choose to get 2 different running backs. he did not want to sign DeAndre Swift when he was a free agent and when Ben Johnson first came in to be the Lions offensive coordinator. So I'm curious how long that relationship lasts, if they hold on to him, if they move on, if they look to get another running back in this year's draft. But this is a really, really great Bears team, a great Bears story. Nothing can take away from what this Bears team did. They played amazing football. Shout out to them. They had a magical season. They just need to build on it. You need to take this momentum. You need to look at where this team has flaws. That's on the defensive side of the ball. Really, the offense is solid. If you go forward with the same offense next year, you will be fine. Maybe you can upgrade a little bit at that running back position, but you've got a great young tight end in Colston Loveland. You have your quarterback. You don't need a receiver. You have Odunze. You have DJ Moore. You have Luther Burden, who's really come on down the stretch. You have Olamide Zaccheaus, who I think is a really solid veteran receiver to have. There are plenty of weapons in Chicago for Caleb Williams to throw the ball to. So many options for him to get the ball over to. You have that defense that is very opportunistic, but you need a pass rush. That's where I would invest. I would spend every single dollar I had if I were them getting a guy like Trey Hendrickson in the building, trying to make sure that you can get a pass rush so that the defense on the secondary side can continue to be opportunistic, but also doesn't have to cover for 7 seconds. We'll get Mayrob's thought on this when he joins us in a little bit. But there are lots of big questions from this game. Is this a Rams team that can consistently avoid danger? Now, the 2 straight playoff games against the Bears and against the Panthers, teams that I think they're objectively better than, they have struggled to get a convincing win. Matthew Stafford has been able to play hero ball both times, but still, it's a little bit concerning to me that this is this fully healthy Rams team, and with that Rams defense that was playing so well early on in the season, it just has not been able to hold up to the way that they need to now against a great Seahawks team. Again, when Mayrob joins us, we will get his thoughts on that as soon as he hops in. But there is a lot to talk about here. We'll continue to cover the divisional rounds next. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will talk all about the national championship game between the Indiana Hoosiers and the Miami Hurricanes. That's coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, and like I promised you, we will have Mayrob answer all of our deepest, darkest questions about the football season that has happened so far, especially the divisional round. He had a pretty good day. His favorite team, the Seattle Seahawks, had a big win. His city's team, the New England Patriots, had a big win. Potential collision course in the Super Bowl. We'll get his thoughts here in a second on everything that happened. We'll get his thoughts on Sean McDermott, no longer the head coach in Buffalo, and we're going to cover the national championship game here in a second. But here to help me out with everything and answer all my questions, Mayrob Fatemi, how are you doing here today?
I am ready to go, and let's get the show done. There's so much to talk about from a crazy, crazy weekend of sports
Yeah,
that
I'm kind of
was.
glad we moved this show back a little bit. I'm going to go all the way back to the first segment because I want your thoughts on Sean McDermott out in Buffalo. He has had a very successful tenure over there. He's had 7 winning seasons. He's been to the playoffs in almost every single one of those. Of course, having Josh Allen at his MVP level helps a lot with that. But talk to me a little bit about this move. What were your initial thoughts, and where do the Bills go from here?
I literally just saw it like 5 minutes ago, so this is kind of my initial reaction right now. I was shocked only because of the timing. They wasted no time for this firing to take place. I mean, we all knew the writing was on the wall with how this Bills team was playing from the beginning of the year for the last 4 years. Like you can't. The thing is, you can't lose. You can't lose in the playoffs when your main guy that you've been losing to, Patrick Mahomes, is out. The other guy you've been losing to, Joe Burrow, is out. And Lamar Jackson, the only other real threat to you, the initial threat to you, is also out of the playoffs. You have pretty much the clearest road that you'll ever have to the Super Bowl coming out of the AFC. And you go up to Denver against the team. Honestly, it's not about how they lost that game. It's not about how they lost that game. It's how poorly they lost that game. That play that Josh Allen had to close the first half, that it might be one of the worst plays I've seen in a long. That looked like a high school football play. That looked like a college football play. That did not look like Josh Allen NFL level play. Going up, running up the field, and then just flinging it back. Granted, I know that's not coaching, but like stuff like that, the little things that have just culminated time and time again to them losing. Um, I know Buffalo can be better, and I expect them to be better. Hopefully, this move will not hinder them. But I mean, at the end of the day, Sean McDermott is not a horrible head coach. Yeah, he has some flaws, but I think if you can get him into another situation, if he when he lands himself another job, because I expect him to land himself at least another head coaching job in the near future, I think he's going to do good things. I think another team would love his talents. But as for Buffalo, crazy stuff happening. I don't know who more to blame, Sean McDermott or Josh Allen. Kind of, is it time to start having that conversation? I don't know. It's a crazy. I have to look into it more, but that was a crazy way to start my morning.
Yeah,
I
you,
did
you
not expect to see Sean McDermott fired right off the bat here.
Yeah, you can't move off of Josh Allen. But that game, I will say, was Josh Allen's fault. He understood it. He took responsibility. But at the same time, when you keep going in the same place over and over and over again, your team isn't getting any better. You're not going over the hump. He's had lots of chances. There were lots of cries for him to get fired after last offseason, after last playoffs. But this was his last year. This was his big chance. Without any of the big guys that you mentioned in there, he had to go here. What do you think they do? Who do they hire? Is there a guy that you have in mind as the next head coach for the Buffalo Bills, or is it a more extensive search for you?
I think it's got to be a little bit of an extensive search just because you brought it up at the top of the show. They don't. The top two candidates on the market aren't there anymore. Kevin Stefanski's gone. John Harbaugh gone. I mean, who are you gonna hire? Mike McDaniel, Cliff Kingsbury, Raheem Morris. Granted, Raheem Morris. I like Raheem Morris. Um, I just think you need to look around for a little bit. I think if Robert Sala's job maybe opens up, you can think about hiring him because I think if the Bills could get themselves a good defense, I think it would do wonders for them because of how good their offense can be. If they can get themselves a good wide receiver coach and a good defensive coordinator slash defensive minded head coach, I think it would do a lot of good things for them. Robert Saleh just seems like the guy that comes to mind for me. Robert Saleh, I've had a lot of respect for him from his days in San Francisco, even with the Jets. It wasn't his fault that that were terrible. First of all, they got injured a bunch of times. They got battered with injuries, and he kind of got pushed out the door with the way that he left the Jets. So I think he would be a good head coaching. He would be a good head coaching candidate for anybody, especially the Bills right now.
Yeah, the name that comes to mind for me is Joe Brady. Keep in house the offensive coordinator of the Bills right now. We've got comments saying Clint Kubiak could be another one over there. I think there's plenty of places that he could go. Places that Sean McDermott could go, though. From the chat, they say they just hope that Sean McDermott doesn't go to Miami here. Your thoughts on a potential suitor for him? I look at places like Miami in division. I look at places like the Cardinals. I know they just move off of a defensive coach here, but I like his fit in one of these organizations that feels like they are not quite there yet, because I don't think the Ravens really go out and hire a guy like McDermott. I don't necessarily think they want another defensive-ish guy who doesn't really bring a scheme. I think they want a genius to come into their building. I think you're looking at a culture builder, a floor raiser, so I think Miami is a good spot. I know Coaster Maniacs doesn't want that to happen, but I think Arizona is also a really interesting one as far as places he could end up.
Miami's another interesting one. I think he might honestly stay in the division. Honestly, with how the team is at playing out, I think the Miami Dolphins could be a good one, as well as the Ravens. The Ravens are a weird one. I don't know who they're going to end up. I think you're right. They're going to need to get an offensive minded head coach to finally solve the riddle of Lamar Jackson. If Sam Darnold can be cracked in Seattle, Lamar Jackson's got to find a way at some point. And honestly, maybe Clint Kubiak's the guy for the Ravens. Honestly, if I'm being honest with how he's been able to coach really well in Seattle, maybe that's the guy over there for the Baltimore Ravens.
We'll talk a little bit more about the coaching search later, but I want your thoughts on the divisional round. We talked about the Bills a bunch. It's definitely Josh Allen's fault in my mind that they lost this game, but a little bit of a controversial call at the end there, May-Rob. Was it a catch? Was it an interception? What's your thoughts on this play in overtime? Brandon Cooks over here.
It was absolutely a catch. It was either a catch or an incomplete pass because, I mean, Cooks caught it, had control, his knee went down, and then the ball got stripped. In any situation, that's a catch down by contact. I know it sucks. I know probably, in my opinion, this is what I think. The NFL was probably trying to hurry up the game because the 8 o'clock slate was literally right around the corner. It was about to start in hindsight. So they might have just hurried up the game as quick as they could in OT, especially I think it was like you had already crossed the midway point of overtime. Regardless, it was absolutely a catch down by contact, and that was a really crazy game in general.
Ugh, that's so tough. That's so tough. See, I wanted it to be a catch so bad. I really did. He didn't survive the ground, man. He didn't do it. Look, I understand that's a little bit of a judgment call, but you can freeze the ball at a lot of different places. You really can. I just don't think he had possession, and you can't call that an incompletion. It never touched the ground. I don't mind the call. Again, my heart and my thoughts for the first day was, God, he caught that. But the more I look at it, when you look at it in slow motion, it's a catch. But when you look at it in real motion, he never really had it. You can see him pull the ball away, which is a little interesting. You can kind of see him pull, and it didn't help that they had a similar replay review the next day. But God, it's just so tight. It's hard to overturn the ruling on the field there more than anything. My heart wants it to be a catch so bad because the Bills deserve to win. They didn't deserve to win that game, but I wanted the Bills to win that game. But the Broncos made a huge defensive play. The refs, I think, kind of screwed them a little bit with some weak pass interference calls. At least the first one, I don't think was pass interference. The second one with Trey White definitely was. But the bigger news coming out of this, outside of that controversy, Bo Nix breaks his ankle in one of the final plays of overtime. We don't really know which one. Sean Payton says second to last one, which would be the kneel down. But a lot of people are pointing to the one where he rolls out to the left. Either way, he is out for the rest of the season. Jared Stidham in as the starter, and Ben DiNucci is here as his backup. They signed him to the practice squad here. Talk to me a little bit about what that means. They face the Patriots in the next round. Talk to me about that. Do they stand a chance? How's the game plan going to be for Sean Payton in order to make it to the Super Bowl and eventually win it?
Sean McDermott needs to have a game plan in this game. He needs to have a game plan with Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham has not thrown a football in an NFL game since 2023. 2 years he has not thrown a pass in an NFL football game. If I'm looking at the Broncos, I'm really worried about how he's going to play. I think it kind of plays in their favor that the Patriots have no idea what Sean Payton's going to put them in, what situation they're going to put him in, what game plan he's going to have, because there's no film on him outside of his rookie season years ago. So when I'm looking at it, I really think Sean Payton kind of has an opportunity to kind of hide the slate, what they're actually going to do. But it's got to be on the heels of their defense if they win this game. The defense needs to play prolific, needs to get pressure in Drake May's face, needs to stop the Patriots' run game, because the Patriots showed that regardless of how good your defense is against the Texans, they can play smash mouth football as good as anybody with Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. Those two guys are probably a top three two-man punch in the National Football League. And I mean, the Broncos are going to be ready to go for this one. Absolutely. But how is those conditions, how is that altitude going to affect the Patriots? How do they gear up for it? Does Mike Vrabel keep them constantly in an environment with low altitude? I don't know what the idea is. There's got to be a game plan for that as well for the Patriots. But I think the Broncos need to use that to their advantage, their defense, as well as those high altitudes to kind of get this one. Any way they can get an advantage against this Patriots team without their starting quarterback, they got to use it.
Yeah, we've seen this Patriots team now go up against two teams that have had pretty obvious weak points. The Chargers' obvious weak point, the offensive line. The Houston obvious weak point, the offensive line. This Denver obvious weak point, now the quarterback, which you can get through by blitzing. You don't know how that's going to go, but they blitzed really effectively against C.J. Stroud and that Texans team. Talk to me about that game. The Patriots get a big win. C.J. Stroud, is it time to have that conversation? Should he be out as the quarterback in Houston? There was some chatter at halftime from the ESPN folks saying that they should maybe start Davis Mills now. I think that was ridiculous. I think he's shell-shocked from that offensive line, and that's not an easy thing to come back from. They need to spend a lot of money. I think the GM should be really, really on the hot seat over there, not the head coach, the GM, because they need to invest everything into offensive line if they ever want to go anywhere. There is a lot to like from this team, from CJ Stroud. He just, again, I said it when we talked about it before, he is shell-shocked. The Patriots get a huge win by blitzing effectively and putting CJ Stroud really in a spot where he is uneasy. Talk to me about the Patriots and talk to me about the future of the quarterback position in Houston. Mayrob, what do you got? What's the next move?
My idea is really quick. I just want to echo what Ryan Clark said at halftime after CJ Stroud threw those 4 picks. He said, these next 20 minutes are going to decide CJ Stroud's career future with the Houston Texans. If he continues to play poorly, if he continues to throw interceptions and turnovers, if he can't get the offense rolling, if he can't give them a spark, the Houston Texans are going to start looking at him as, are you really that guy? Are you really the guy that can bring us to the Super Bowl? Are you the future of the Houston Texans? That was the 4th straight time that the Houston Texans had lost in the divisional round. The 4th straight time. Yeah, I know you lost to Patrick Mahomes a couple times. Yeah, I know you lost. They lost to the Titans once as well, I think. I don't remember. I don't remember everybody they've lost to, but they've consistently lost in this round. They're a second round exit. Call them the Joel Embiid, the Philadelphia 76ers of the NFL. Honestly, call them the Joel Embiid of the NFL. But CJ Stroud, you need to find a way to get out of the second round. I think you're right. When I hopped on here and you were talking about the offensive line being a big-time issue, you need to get him an offensive line if you want to see any sort of growth with this team. Just ask the Seattle Seahawks. How long did they have? Did they play without an offensive line? Even now, there's still people talking about how poor that offensive line is. But in 2022, they finally went ahead and drafted two tackles. Even last year, they went ahead and drafted a tackle with their first round pick. And they've just revitalized the entire thing. It's helped the run game, it's helped the passing game. Woody Marks is a good running back. Nick Chubb is a phenomenal backup running back. You have Nico Collins, even though I know you didn't have him in this game. You have Dalton Schultz, even though I know you didn't have him in this game. You have a great group of wideout receivers that can be something eventually. Jaden Higgins, Xavier Hutchinson are nothing to sneeze at back there. I think their youth just showed big time in the wide receiver room. I think if they can find themselves a legit wide receiver too and revamp that offensive line, I think this Texans team can really go places. The problem is right now they have none of that. They didn't have their starting wide receiver. They didn't have their starting tight end, and they didn't have their starting right tackle, who was also their right guard, who was also their left guard at one point in the season. He played three different positions in the entire season. So, to answer your question, I think CJ Stroud deserves another opportunity, one more opportunity. If Kyler Murray got an opportunity last year, give CJ Stroud one last year. It's not like he's going to the playoffs like the Steelers every year and getting bum rushed every time. He's losing in close games, and if you give him an opportunity to win, I think he can do that for you and get you over the hump. I
Absolutely.
still
I'm
think
on the same page. I just think, like I said, he's shell shocked, and if they don't fix that offensive line, they are going to be in big trouble. Talk to me about the Patriots, though. Big hometown win. I'm sure Boston was going crazy.
Boston was crazy. It was a phenomenal one. I was at a sports bar. I was working at my sports bar, and it was just packed from before this game started. Every table reserved, couldn't even get in. Packed house. It was a phenomenal sight to see. This was for all those Patriots haters that said, "Oh, the Patriots are going to be terrible for 30 years after Tom Brady retires." Oh, the Patriots aren't good at football anymore. Sorry. The Patriots might be good at football again.
They
I'm
could be.
sorry. They could be. Drake May might be their another franchise quarterback. Mike Vrabel might be another franchise head coach. Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson are legit. You don't have a Randy Moss, but their defense is really good. That team played out on every level, outplayed the Texans on every level, shocked pretty much everyone around with how they played, and they deserve a lot of credit in the world. Drake May did look a little bit shaky. I don't love that he fumbled the ball 3 times in the game. I think he fumbled like 4 times actually and lost two. But when you're playing a good defense like that, it happens. I'd like him to have a little bit of better pocket presence, but it is what it is. But that defense absolutely stepped up. When you have a game, Mike Vrabel had a phenomenal game plan in the first half to just zero blitz CJ Stroud as much as he could just to get him off his game, get him out of his element. And then by the second half, you throw 4 picks in the first half. By the second half, all Vrabel had to do was rush four, bring everybody back, and have them beat him downfield. And you saw how that went. Marcus Jones deserves a lot of credit in the world. 2 picks in the game. Should have had a third one. And Christian Gonzalez, another great game. Across the board, the Seahawks, the Patriots defense was electric in every single way. They showed why they're the third best defense in the National Football League behind the Seahawks and the Texans. And they got a really tough test against the Broncos. But if they could hold off that Texans defense with that O-line, I really give them an opportunity to go toe-to-toe with anybody.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the final team. I've got 3 numbers for you, Mayrob, 3 of them. I've got 54, I've got 9, and I've got 0. 54, the number of points the Seattle Seahawks have put up on the 49ers in 2 weeks. 9, the amount of points that they've given up in those 2 games. And 0, the amount of touchdowns that they've given up to Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and the entire San Francisco team in 120 minutes of football. Can anybody beat this Seattle Seahawks team right now?
Maybe if they can get Tom Brady out of retirement and bring Malcolm Butler back on the field with Pete Carroll on the sideline, maybe.
Kenny Walker, 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards on the ground, nearly 150 from scrimmage. Zach Charbonnet goes down, but it doesn't matter. You should have been feeding Kenny Walker the entire season. He is a special running back. You have JSN, who nearly hit 2,000 yards. Now, it doesn't help that Sam Darnold seemingly couldn't throw the ball more than 10 yards downfield, but it sure does help that you didn't even need to do it, because that defense is elite. It's playing out of its mind. Rashid Shaheed, the best return man in football right now, a huge trade paying huge dividends. Now 2 return touchdowns, a punt return against the Rams, and a kick return to open up this game to immediately end the San Francisco 49ers season, really 10 seconds into this one. It was crazy. Again, this is your team, Mayrob. You have the floor. Talk to me about the Seattle Seahawks. What a win, and they look like a juggernaut.
They look like an absolute juggernaut last night. On Saturday night. When you look at this team, they didn't really have a game where they didn't have a game against a good opponent where they just simply blew them out. They didn't. They didn't have a game where you could look at Sam Darnold and say, hey man, you don't need to do too much. The defense is that elite. The dark side, what the Seahawks defense, what they're labeling themselves, the dark side, I am pretty much at this point ready to start comparing them to the Legion of Boom with the way that they played. That was so eerily similar to that game against the Denver Broncos, the Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos years ago. I mean, a punt return for a touchdown. The next drive, Brock Purdy gets hit. The ball goes flying into the air. You thought it was a fumble for 6. It wasn't. It didn't end up being one. But Brock Purdy throwing a pick, losing a fumble. Mac Jones comes in, throws another pick. The Seahawks were not giving them any room to move, any room to grow. That Seahawks defense was suffocating. Absolutely suffocating everywhere you look. My laptop's about to die, so just a heads up. But when you look at the way they are so good on every line, the pass rush is phenomenal. The linebacker group led by Ernest Jones is phenomenal. And then the secondary is another beast of its own. Witherspoon with Reek Woolen, with Julian Love, with Nick Amanwari, who's the second coming of Cam Chancellor at this point. I'm serious. He is an absolute stud. You're going to see me with a Nick Amanwari jersey on this pod at some point. Just like I'm going to start copying you back there, Jeremy, at some point. But when I'm looking at the Seahawks team, I'm very happy with the way they're playing. I was hoping that the Bears would win against the Rams, but you know what? At this point, you might as well just throw the fridge at us. Give us the Rams, give us the Niners, give us the hardest playoff. Two teams, probably one of the hardest playoff runs we've seen in recent history, going through the Niners and the Rams in the same season. And then let's go head to Santa Clara for the Super Bowl. I don't know. I was really trying to stay patient, trying to stay humble, but the way that they played on Saturday night, they can beat anybody in any era with that type of team. And even you mentioned Sam Darnold still playing hurt. Talk about that dot to Jackson Smith and Jigba in the corner of the end zone. That was an insane play. Rolling out to his left, throwing on the run, and throwing an absolute laser to the corner of the end zone to Jackson Smith and Jigba. There's nothing more you can say than the Seahawks and Clint Kubiak deserve all their flowers, and they're going to go ahead and win the Super Bowl this year.
I tend to agree with you here. That team is really good. Their toughest test, the Rams. Mayrob, if you need to step away for a second, we are talking some college football national championships here, and we'll end it. You think you can make it through?
We'll see. We'll see how long the laptop will last.
All right, let's talk a little bit college football playoffs. The college football playoffs here have really delivered, especially down the stretch here. The Miami Hurricanes have had this magical Cinderella-esque run, a team that a lot of people said should not have made it. They beat Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's better. It doesn't matter. Miami is in the national championship game. They've taken down Ole Miss in an instant classic. They have taken down Texas A&M in a defensive slugfest. They have absolutely destroyed a Ohio State team that a lot of people thought was a favorite to win the national championship for the second year in a row, but now they arguably get their toughest test. The number 1 team in the nation, the only undefeated team remaining, the Indiana Hoosiers. Say that in the beginning of the season 2 years ago, and nobody is going to take you seriously. But Curt Cignetti has done what no man thought they could do, what no person in the history of football has done, and made Indiana a winner. Heading into this year, Indiana was the worst team in the history of college football by a record. Now they're only the second worst team in the history of college football. They're moving up in the world, and they're playing for a national championship. Fernando Mendoza wins the Heisman Trophy. He's going to be the number one pick out of Indiana. This is an incredible accomplishment and the greatest coaching turnaround maybe in sports history, at least in college football history. This is huge. He's turning Indiana into a legitimate power program, not just a legit power program, but a legitimate juggernaut. They have been the most consistent football team throughout the entire college football season. They have continuously destroyed their competition in these playoffs. They've absolutely boat raced a team in the Alabama Crimson Tide, only allowing 3 points. They sent Oregon packing. They couldn't even fly home after that game because of how much of a wing whooping that they gave to that Duck squad. It was a huge, huge win, and Fernando Mendoza plays in his hometown of Miami in a home game for the Miami Hurricanes here. This game's going to be great. The Hoosiers are favored by 7.5, maybe even 8.5 points at this point with the way that the line has been moving. Everyone's been talking for the last week about how the Indiana Hoosiers are going to blow out this Miami team, but don't go so quickly because this Miami defensive line, it's no joke either, Mayrob. This is an elite Miami defense. The reason they've made this to the national championship game, not just because of Malachi Toney being maybe the most electric football player in all of college football. Not just because Carson Beck, using his veteran abilities to not make those mistakes and use his legs when he needs them to, but it's because you have these huge pieces on the defensive line, and that Miami defense has been elite. Of course, everyone knows Ruben Bain. He's going to go in the top 10 of the draft, but Akeem Mesidor has been a huge piece as well on that defensive line. That's an edge rushing duo that nobody wants to go through. This game is going to be predicated between that Indiana offensive run game and that defense of the Miami Hurricanes. If they can slow down that run game for the Hoosiers, that puts a lot more on the plate of Fernando Mendoza, and that makes it a lot easier to tee off and rush the passer, which I think gives a little bit of an advantage to Miami. Although Fernando Mendoza still won the Heisman, so I don't know how much of an advantage that really gives him. This game, I think, is going to be closer than some people think. I still think Indiana wins this one. I would have taken this at 6.5. I think they win by about a touchdown, but once you get to 2 scores here, I think you start to look a little bit more towards Miami, although that's been a juggernaut of a team and no one's been able to slow them down yet. We'll have to see. It all comes down to which team makes more mistakes. We saw in that Oregon game, Dante Moore, immediate pick 6. We have seen in the Alabama game that defense play a huge role, force turnovers on Ty Simpson. If you play a clean game, which no one's been able to do quite yet against this team, that is when you get a huge win. That's when you can upset the Indiana Hoosiers and Curt Cignetti. Being at home definitely helps. I lean towards this Indiana Hoosiers team to win. Blowout is what everyone is thinking. I think it'll be a little bit closer than people think. I think that number's pretty much right on the line. I was going to guess about 9.5 to feel comfortable. Mayrob is back. I believe he has gotten a charger here. We will get his thoughts in a second on this game. But let's talk a little bit about what the stadium has looked like, because again, this is in Miami. That's a home field advantage type vibe. Although these tickets are going for like $3,000 and Indiana has traveled well. Does the home environment affect this game, Mayrob? And how do you think this game is going to go? Talk to me a little bit about the national championship.
I think home field advantage is going to play a big deal in this game. I'll be really serious. I mean, Miami's playing a home game for the national championship game against probably the best team, arguably the best, well, no, the best team in college football this season, the Heisman winner, and the team that's been bum rushing everybody all year long. Indiana is that good of a team. They've been playing toe-to-toe. They lit up Oregon. They've been playing unbelievable football. They deserve all the props in the world for the way they've been playing. But if I'm being truthfully honest, Jeremy, I want to flip it over to you for this because I do have some questions for you because I know you're the college football guy. I know I'm one of the national football guys, You and Nolan are the college football guys. How do you see Carson Beck having any opportunity to win this game in a track meet, in a shootout of a game? Can he go tit for tat with Fernando Mendoza in that offense? And is there any way that you can see Miami winning this game?
For sure. There's absolutely a way that Miami can win this game, A-Rob. And that's a good question because when a team is expected to blow out a team, that's kind of the way you want to look at it here because this is the way that it goes. It's the team that's not going to make mistakes. And Indiana has not made any mistakes all season long. That's going to be the key. Carson Beck, despite how well he's played, especially in that Ole Miss game, made a lot of mistake-worthy plays. He threw a lot of plays that I think could have or maybe even should have been interceptions with the way that he was playing football here. It is not the greatest look, but if he can play clean football, if he cannot turn the ball over, if they can get the run game going with Fletcher, Mark Fletcher, who's had a really good postseason, a really good playoffs, that's the key here. You have to be able to force mistakes with your great defense, and you have to be able to not make mistakes. The other thing that I think is interesting here, Miami's been hit with a couple of big issues in that secondary. There was a targeting penalty against Ole Miss in the second half. Against Miami in the second half against Ole Miss, I should say. That is taking out one of their starting corners at an area where they already have two corners questionable for the game. That is going to be huge. They need their corners out there to cover guys like Surratt, to cover guys like Omar Cooper out there. There are a lot of great weapons for Indiana. They need to hold on in that first half, keep it close, and again, the way they win this game, they need to play mistake-free football. They need to get after Mendoza. They need to get his jersey dirty, and they need to slow down that run game. That's a lot of keys, but that's because Indiana has played. I'm not going to say perfect football, but near perfect football. They've been the most consistent, mistake-free team, and that's how you win at the college level. If Miami can do that, they've got a chance. If they throw an interception, if Carson Beck throws even one pick, this game is over, and Indiana's going to at least win by a score because they're not going to make those mistakes. It needs to be a near perfect football game. They've got the ability to do it. Mario Cristobal is a good head coach, but it's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really tough. Carson Beck's going to need to play a near perfect football game. But just looking at the way that they played against Ole Miss, the way they were able to get the run game going, I think if they can emulate that, I feel like they have an opportunity. I think if they could if any team can play like that against a juggernaut level of a team, they have an opportunity with the run game because the run game opens the passing lanes, and as long as the quarterback plays good, safe, quality football and delivers the football where it needs to go, any team has an opportunity in any level of in football. But honestly, Jeremy, if Indiana's able to finish this season off, if they're able to go out and win the national championship game with Fernando Mendoza, how much do you think it would mean to the city of Indiana to win this game?
It means so much to Hoosierville. I've already said this is the greatest turnaround in the history of college sports, especially with a championship game. It's a legit movie script. People have been saying it. It really is. You get a guy that's been overlooked his whole career in Curt Cignetti, brings a bunch of underdogs from JMU to come and make this team not only the losingest team in college football history, becomes the number one team in 2 years. With a ragtag group of guys that everyone thought wasn't good enough to play at the power level to win a national championship, that would be the greatest turnaround in the history of sports. It is a tough look for college football right now, but that's how NIL is. It really is an interesting way to look at this because, again, this is the greatest turnaround in the history of college sports, could be the greatest turnaround in the history of sports here. Take the losing program to the top of the mountain in just 2 seasons. That's ridiculous. That's where you look at Curt Cignetti there. But a lot more to like from this national championship. We'll be back tomorrow to cover everything that we need to know about it. Rob, I do want to turn the floor to you because we haven't got your full predictions yet. Talk to me about what you got going on in this game.
I was going to say Miami's going to win this game, and I think Miami's going to get it done. Spoil the season for the Indiana Hoosiers. Miami's kind of been the comeback kid, been the kid that the team that's just burst out onto the scene here, the fun team in college football, the underdog, so to speak. I'm going to roll with them to keep it going in a really big national championship game. I think it's going to be really close. I think it's going to go down to the wire, but I think Carson Beck is going to break the hearts of Fernando Mendoza and Indiana in their home stadium in Miami. I think they're going to lift the national championship for the Miami Hurricanes.
That
That's
would
my
be
take.
a massive upset, but again, they've got the talent to do it. That's the U. The
Yes,
U
they
would be
do.
all the way back. They have not been this back since the early 2000s. A lot of big storylines heading in to this college football national championship. We'll break it all down tomorrow when we see who takes it
Jeremy,
home. Yes.
real quick, because I just saw this. I want to bring this up. I want to get your take on it because I don't know if you've seen it yet. There's been, according to Diana Rossini, talking to this is a Twitter post talking to NFL executives around the league about Buffalo's next head coaching options. The name that keeps coming up is a familiar one, a Buffalo native and someone Josh Allen loves. Brian Daboll
Yep.
for the next head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Give me your take on that. You're the Giants guy. You watch this man coach in New York. I love them personally as well, but I know you're the guy to speak on this. Give me your take on Brian Daboll
Yeah,
real
Brian
quick.
Daboll is a really good coach. As far as a head coach, I think he's got issues. What I would like them to do, if you're not going to hire Joe Brady to be your head coach, you have to hire a guy that Josh Allen likes. I don't mind hiring Brian Daboll. We saw what he did to help turn around his career. I wouldn't mind him as an offensive coordinator for potentially Mike Tomlin. I think if there's any job that you're going to be able to convince Mike Tomlin to coach this year, it's the Buffalo Bills. And I think that might be what they have in mind. I doubt that he comes out of retirement, but I think the only way that Brian Daboll comes back is as the offensive coordinator. Otherwise, I'm on the same line of thinking as you, but I think they go with the current OC and Joe Brady to continue that culture. But I do like your thoughts there. I think that's a really great name. There were reasons why that regime failed, his regime in New York. It wasn't because of his offensive schemes. It was because of the guys that he hired. He was too afraid to make those big changes that needed to happen. We're going to have to see if that continues as a head coach, if he's learned his lesson. He's a great offensive mind, and he deserves a chance to be an offensive coordinator somewhere. But as far as the head coach of Buffalo, I just don't know if that's the right decision. I would give that chance to Joe Brady first. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to baseball. That's right, some big baseball news. We'll run through it quick. Kyle Tucker, now a member of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Is baseball over? Should we just cancel the MLB season and go right to the World Series? We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is a beautiful Monday, January 19th. Happy MLK Day, everybody. We have our final segment of the show. I know, gone so soon already. We have to talk about Kyle Tucker. We passed it over on Friday, but we need to talk about the big story in baseball. Kyle Tucker, $60 million richer every single year. 4 years, $240 million. Oh my God. That is so much money for Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker, of course, who else but the Dodgers? $60 million a year, a huge get for them. They fill out that outfield yet again. And now you look at that lineup. It is better than an all-star lineup. Let's run through the top. Mookie Betts, former MVP. You have Shohei Ohtani, reigning MVP. Freddie Freeman, former MVP. Kyle Tucker, MVP-level player. Teoscar Hernandez, home run derby champion a couple of years ago. Max Muncy, always a clutch hitter for them. Will Smith steps up huge in the playoffs at catcher and really one of the best defensive catchers in the game. You have a great, you can keep going down this lineup, right? This lineup is ridiculous. There is no shortage of elite talent, and that's because they're paying for it. We're not even getting over to the teams, the pitching side of things, where they've continued to pay up those big bucks. They got Edwin Diaz for a big contract here. The Dodgers will spend money, and baseball is different for it. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It really isn't. But there are a lot of things to like about this move. Of course, Kyle Tucker not only gets a huge payday, $60 million a year, but he will hit free agency yet again at age 32, Mayrob. He is going to get a huge payday a second time. This deal is massive. I kind of teased this question heading into it. The Dodgers have won 2 World Series in a row. They're only getting better, and the teams are struggling to keep up with them. Is it inevitable that they win another one? And are they finally going to break the MLB wins record this year? Or is this something that we could see a David versus Goliath happen? Is there someone that can take down this Dodgers squad after 2 straight World Series and adding yet another slugger, the best free agent bat that was out there in Kyle Tucker, to this roster, Mayrob?
Anybody can beat this Dodgers team is if they lose some of their guys in their starting rotation. If Shohei Ohtani goes down with another injury, if Yoshinobu Yamamoto goes down with an injury, Freddie Freeman was playing with an injury last year. Mookie Betts was kind of on the tailor end of his career. He didn't have the greatest year last year. When I'm looking at this team, the one thing I will say about the Dodgers is their age is not helping them. Their age does not help them. They are an older squad. They're dealing with they could be dealing with a lot of injury-prone-ish guys. We obviously don't hope that here, but if the Dodgers are healthy, if they're fully healthy and loaded and ready to go, nobody's beating this team. No, nobody's beating this team. Nobody. Adding Kyle Tucker to this team only lets you know that, they're just gonna sit there and beat everybody like 8-2 every single game.
Yep,
Like,
it's a
seriously.
big mess. It really is a big mess.
He's gonna average like 6. They're gonna average like 6 to 8 runs per game. Doesn't matter who you're playing. At least against some of the better pitchers. Against some of the worst pitchers, imagine like 14-1 games against the A's or against throw another bad team out there, the Pirates or the Twins or somebody like that. They're just gonna sit there and beat teams down. That's what they're going to do. They're going to sit there and beat up teams. They're going to go out there and try and go for the best record in MLB history. This is one of the best teams we've ever seen, and I think they're absolutely going to three-peat if they stay healthy.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. This feels like a three-peat waiting to happen. The bigger question, are they going to beat the wins record? They are that close because I thought they were going to do it last year with a healthy Shohei Ohtani pitching. Do you think this is the year they get it done? Because they've been flirting with it for a long time now.
Yeah, as long as they stay healthy, absolutely. I think this is the year that they absolutely do it because you can't add a Kyle Tucker with Teoscar Hernandez, with Freddie Freeman, with Mookie Betts, with Shohei Ohtani. That's just their top guys in their starting lineup. I'm not a baseball guy. There's definitely names I'm also missing here. Tommy Edmonds still there as well, casually. There's a lot of guys. This is an absolutely loaded roster, and they can hit the baseball. Any team that can hit the baseball legit like this can go for the wins record, and they are loaded to do it.
Yeah, let me run through this projected lineup for you. Leading off at DH, Shohei Ohtani. Mookie Betts playing shortstop, hitting second. Hitting third in right field, the new addition, Kyle Tucker. A little left action here. At catcher in the cleanup spot, Will Smith. Freddie Freeman, former MVP, first base. Keep going with left, right. Freddie Freeman, former MVP, hitting in that 5-hole. In the 6-hole, your former home run derby champion, Teoscar Hernandez, in left field. Again, you left, making any pitching matchup absolutely brutal. Max Muncy, the old man at third base, continuing to play great baseball in the 7-hole. Left. Tommy Edman, you brought up, hitting 8th at second base. That's probably the place that they can upgrade. And one of the best defensive center fielder, an absolute great contact bat that had huge hits for them in center field, Andy Pages for that finishing spot in the lineup. Ohtani, Betts, Tucker, Smith, Freeman, Hernandez, Muncy, Edman, Pages. That is compared to the AL starting lineup for the All-Star game last year. You got Gleyber Torres, Riley Green, Aaron Judge, Cal Raleigh, Vlad Guerrero, Ryan O'Hearn, Junior Caminero, Javi Baez, Jacob Wilson, and Tariq Skubal at pitcher. I'm taking that Dodgers lineup over the All-Star lineup. That's what I'm looking at right now. That's how good this lineup is. And it was that good last year, but this year they add one of the best bats out there. It's incredibly impressive, and I am all in on the Dodgers this year. The Mets also go out and get Bo Bichette on a massive deal. Bo Bichette was a huge piece of that team for the Blue Jays that just made it to the World Series. They have to let him go after going out and acquiring some big talent. They went out and they paid a huge pitcher in Dylan Cease for $30 million a year, 7 over 210, 210 over 7, I should say. A lot of money giving out over there with the Blue Jays. They were in play for Kyle Tucker too at about 50 mil, and then the Dodgers swooped in, giving him 60. Baseball has changed forever. Big money. I expect a lockout in 2027. So let's enjoy one more year of baseball before it completely fades away into obscurity with yet another lockout. Lots of big news from around those world of sports. We will keep you updated on everything as time continues to go on. We will cover more baseball as spring training continues to get closer. Pitcher and catchers report in just about 3 weeks. The baseball season is just around the corner. The national championship is tonight. We'll go over winners and losers from the divisional round tomorrow. We'll be back with our normal time. We have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus and Mayrob Fatemi. We will be back about